The lights of Nexus Prime Station glowed like stars against the black of space. Inside the massive diplomatic complex, Ambassador Lisa Carter sat alone in her small office. She was tired. Another long day of meetings where nobody listened to her. The other alien diplomats always looked at her like she was a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. Lisa rubbed her eyes and looked at the stack of reports on her desk. Trade disputes, mining rights, border complaints, all the boring stuff that the big alien powers left for the humans to handle. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years now, but they still treated humanity like the new kids in school. A soft chime came from her door. Lisa frowned. It was past midnight station time. Who would visit this late? "Come in," she called. The door slid open with a quiet hiss. A tall, thin figure stepped inside. Lisa recognized him immediately, Elder Zethron of the Calorian people. His blue-gray skin looked paler than usual, and his large silver eyes were full of worry. "Elder Zethron," Lisa said, standing up quickly. "What brings you here so late?" The Calorian elder moved slowly into the room. His long robes rustled with each step. Lisa had always admired the Calorians. They were peaceful people, known throughout the galaxy for their amazing healing abilities. Their doctors could cure diseases that killed other species. Their medicines worked miracles. "Ambassador Carter," Zethran said in his soft, musical voice, "I apologize for the late hour, but I had nowhere else to turn." Lisa gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Please sit." "What's wrong?" Zethran sat down carefully. His hands shook as he folded them in his lap. "My people are dying, Ambassador. The Vex machines are killing us all." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vex Armada. They were machines, cold and heartless. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted and destroying everything else. But they had never attacked a major civilization before. "The Vex are attacking Calorian space?" Lisa asked. "3 of our colonies are gone," Zethran said. His voice cracked. "Complete silence, no signals, no survivors. We sent ships to investigate. They found nothing but empty worlds and burned cities." Lisa sat back in her chair, shocked. The Calorians had 12 colonies spread across 4 star systems. They were home to nearly 2 billion peaceful souls. "What does the Council say?" Lisa asked, though she already suspected the answer. Zethron's shoulders sagged. "The Altarian Empire says it is not their concern. The Zenthari Confederacy claims the Vex are too powerful to fight. The Ethereal Collective speaks of the natural balance of the universe." He looked directly at Lisa. "They all have excuses. Beautiful, logical excuses." Lisa felt anger building in her chest. The major powers of the galaxy were afraid. They would let the Calorians die rather than risk their own fleets against the Vex. "What about military aid?" Lisa asked. "Surely someone will help." "We asked everyone," Zethran said. "The Altarians have 10,000 warships, but they worry about protecting their own borders. The Zenthari have advanced weapons, but they calculate the odds are against success. The Ethereals speak of cosmic wisdom and do nothing." Lisa stood up and walked to her window. Outside, she could see the lights of other diplomatic offices. Most were dark now. The ambassadors of mighty civilizations were sleeping peacefully, while the Calorians faced extinction. "How long do you have?" Lisa asked quietly. "Our intelligence suggests the Vex will reach our homeworld within 6 months, Zethran said. "Maybe less. They want our quantum crystals. The crystals power our healing technology, but the Vex can use them for their weapons." Lisa turned back to face the Calorian elder. She saw desperation in his silver eyes. This proud being whose people had saved countless lives across the galaxy was begging for help that would never come. "Elder," Lisa said slowly, "why did you come to me?" Zethran was quiet for a long moment. "Because your people are the only ones who have not said no," he finally answered. "The others gave us reasons why they cannot help. You are the only one who has not yet given us reasons." Lisa felt the weight of his words. Humanity was the smallest member of the Galactic Council. Earth had maybe 200 warships total. The human colonies were scattered and barely defended. What could they possibly do against the Vex Armada? Elder, you know humanity's situation, Lisa said carefully. We're not a military power. Our fleet is tiny compared to the others. I know, Zethran said. But your species is young. You still remember what it means to fight for what is right, not just what is profitable or safe. Lisa walked back to her desk and sat down. She looked at the reports again, but the words blurred together. Her mind was racing. Could humanity really help? Should they even try? What exactly are you asking of us? Lisa said. Zethran leaned forward. Save my people, he said simply. I know it seems impossible. I know your fleet is small, but you are the only ones left to ask. Lisa stared at the alien elder. She thought about her own people back on Earth. Humans had always been fighters. They had clawed their way up from a single world to become a spacefaring civilization. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. But this was different. This was the Vex Armada. Machine minds that felt no fear, no mercy, no doubt. They had destroyed civilizations that were older and stronger than humanity. I need to contact Earth, Lisa said finally. Zethran nodded slowly. I understand you must. Consult your leaders. Elder, Lisa said, looking directly into his silver eyes. I cannot promise anything, but I can promise this. I will make sure your plea is heard. Zethran stood up, his robes flowing around him. That is all I can ask. Ambassador, your species may be young, but you are the only ones left who might still care enough to try. After the Calorian elder left, Lisa sat alone in her office. She looked out at the stars and thought about the choice facing humanity. They could stay, safe, and let the Calorians die. Or they could risk everything to help people who had always been kind to them. Lisa reached for her communication device. She had a call to make to Earth. A call that would change everything. The emergency signal reached Earth at 3 a.m. local time. President Daniel Hayes was pulled from his sleep by the urgent beeping of his secure communication device. He sat up in bed, instantly alert. Emergency signals from space were rare and always meant trouble. Mr. President, came the voice of his aide through the speaker. We have a priority transmission from Ambassador Carter at Nexus Prime. She says it cannot wait. Daniel rubbed his face and walked to his private office. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Lisa Carter's worried face. She looked tired and stressed. Lisa, what's the situation? Daniel asked. Mr. President, we have a problem. The Calorians are facing extinction. The Vex Armada is systematically destroying their colonies. They've asked for help. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The Vex machines were the nightmare scenario that every military planner feared. What did the other powers say? They all refused, Lisa said. The Altarians, the Zenthari, the Ethereals, everyone, they're all too afraid or too calculating to act. And the Calorians came to us. Yes, sir. Elder Zethran made a personal plea. Mr. President, these are good people. They've helped save millions of lives across the galaxy with their medical knowledge. If we don't help them, no one will. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He understood the weight of what Lisa was telling him. How long do we have? 6 months, maybe less, before the Vex reach their homeworld. I'll call an emergency meeting of the High Command. Stand by, Lisa. Daniel ended the call and immediately contacted his senior staff. Within 2 hours, the most important people in human government were gathered in the secure conference room beneath the presidential palace. Fleet Admiral Grace Thompson sat at the long table next to Defense Secretary Rick Martinez. General Kate Foster, head of military intelligence, had flown in from Mars Command. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel began, we face a decision that will define humanity's place in the galaxy. He explained the situation quickly and clearly. The Calorians were doomed unless someone helped them. Every major power had refused. The Vex Armada had an estimated 10,000 ships. Humanity had exactly 212 combat vessels. The math is simple, Admiral Thompson said bluntly. We cannot win a direct fight against the Vex. Our entire fleet would be destroyed. Maybe, General Foster said quietly. But since when do humans worry about fair fights? Defense Secretary Martinez looked at the intelligence reports spread across the table. The Vex are machines. They think like machines. They calculate probabilities and make logical decisions. Exactly, Foster said. They expect us to act logically too. They expect us to look at their numbers and run away scared. President Hayes looked around the table. Kate, what are you thinking? General Foster stood up and walked to the large display screen. She pulled up historical files that made everyone in the room pay attention. Battle records from humanity's bloodiest wars. Impossible victories against overwhelming odds. Thermopylae, she said, pointing to an ancient battle. Record. 300 Spartans held off thousands of Persians. Rorke's Drift. 150 British soldiers fought off 4,000 Zulu warriors. The Battle of Bastogne. Surrounded Americans told the Germans to go to hell. She turned to face the group. Humanity has a long history of doing the impossible when it matters. We don't calculate odds, we calculate necessity. Admiral Thompson shook her head. Those were human enemies, Kate. The Vex are different. They're machines. They don't feel fear or doubt. Neither did the Persians at Thermopylae, Foster replied. Neither did the Germans at Bastogne. Superior numbers mean nothing if you can't use them effectively. President Hayes was quiet, thinking. Everyone in the room knew the stakes. If they said yes, they were risking humanity's entire fleet, maybe their whole civilization. If they said no, they were letting good people die while the galaxy watched. What's our actual military capability? Hayes asked. Admiral Thompson pulled up the fleet roster. 212 frontline warships, about 50 support vessels. We have maybe 30,000 trained military personnel spread across 12 star systems. But we have more than that, Martinez added. Our merchant marine has another 1,000 ships. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, transport ships. Most could be converted for military use if needed. And our people, Foster said. We have 12 billion humans across our colonies. How many would volunteer if we called for them? Hayes knew the answer to that question. Humans were stubborn and loyal. If their government asked for help, millions would answer. How long would it take to mobilize everything we have? Hayes asked. Full mobilization? Thompson thought for a moment. If we converted civilian ships and called up reserves, maybe 2 weeks to get everyone organized, another 2 weeks to move them into position. That's cutting it close, Martinez said. The Calorians might not have a month. Foster stepped forward. Mr. President, there's something else to consider. Right now, humanity is seen as a minor power. Nice people, but not important. If we do this, if we actually take on the Vex, everything changes. Win or lose? Hayes asked. Win or lose? Foster confirmed. The galaxy will never look at us the same way again. President Hayes walked to the window and looked out at the lights of the capital city. Millions of people were sleeping peacefully, unaware that their leader was about to make the most important decision in human history. He thought about Elder Zethron's desperate plea. He thought about the Calorian doctors who had saved human lives. He thought about what it meant to be human. Finally, he turned back to his advisors. Recommendations? Admiral Thompson spoke first. Sir, militarily this is suicide. We cannot win. Defense Secretary Martinez nodded. The logical choice is to stay out of it. General Foster smiled grimly. The logical choice is usually the wrong choice for humans. President Hayes looked at each of them. Kate, if we do this, what are our chances? Of winning. Maybe 10%, Foster said. Of making the Vex regret attacking peaceful people? 100%. Hayes made his decision. Admiral Thompson, begin immediate mobilization of all military assets. Secretary Martinez, start converting civilian vessels for combat use. General Foster, I want a battle plan that the Vex will never see coming. The 3 senior officers stared at him. Sir, Admiral Thompson said carefully, Are you ordering us to go to war with the Vex Armada? President Hayes looked her in the eye. I'm ordering you to save the Colorians, however you think we can do that. Within 6 hours, emergency broadcasts were sent to every human colony and station. The message was simple. Humanity was going to war. Volunteers were needed, ships were needed, everything was needed. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Mining corporations offered their entire fleets. Civilian pilots volunteered by the thousands. Factories began working around the clock to convert cargo ships into weapons of war. As Admiral Thompson watched the reports flood in, she realized something important. President Hayes was right. When humanity decided to fight, they didn't do it halfway. They mobilized everything they had, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Admiral Grace Thompson stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching dozens of screens that showed the greatest mobilization in human history. Ships were moving everywhere. Military bases buzzed with activity. Civilian vessels lined up at conversion yards, waiting to be turned into weapons of war. It had been 1 week since President Hayes made his decision. In that time, humanity had changed completely. The peaceful trading ships that carried goods between colonies were now being fitted with armor and weapons. Mining lasers meant for cutting asteroids were being modified to cut through enemy hulls. Status. Report. Thompson called out. Commander Steve Parker, leader of the elite Black Star Squadron, stepped forward. Admiral, we now have 430 ships ready for combat. Another 200 are still being converted. Thompson nodded. The numbers were growing, but they were still facing impossible odds. What about personnel? 60,000 volunteers so far, Parker replied. We're having to turn people away. That was the amazing part. When humanity called for help, everyone answered. Farmers left their fields. Factory workers left their jobs. Even retired veterans came out of retirement to serve again. The spirit was incredible, but Thompson worried it might not be enough. Dr. Tony Clark hurried into the command center, carrying a tablet full of technical data. He was the head of the emergency weapons program, working around the clock to turn civilian equipment into military hardware. Admiral, we have a breakthrough, Tony said excitedly. The mining corporations use quantum drilling lasers for deep asteroid work. We've figured out how to turn them into ship-killing weapons. Thompson looked at the data on his tablet. The numbers were impressive. How many do we have? Enough to outfit 300 ships, Tony replied. They're not as powerful as military-grade weapons, but they'll punch through Vex armor. What else? Tony grinned. The cargo haulers are perfect troop transports. We can fit 1,000 soldiers in each one. And the industrial fabricators can make ammunition and spare parts while we're in combat. Thompson felt a spark of hope. Humans were good at making things work. They took whatever they had and made it better. Mining equipment became weapons. Cargo ships became warships. Factory workers became soldiers. Captain Monica Lewis entered the command center still wearing her spacesuit. She had just returned from a secret mission to Colorian space aboard the intelligence vessel UES Pathfinder. Report, Captain, Thompson, said. Monica pulled off her helmet, her face serious. Admiral, I made contact with Colorian survivors from the destroyed colonies. They're hiding in asteroid fields and abandoned mining stations. What did they tell you? The Vex have a pattern, Monica said. They always attack the same way. First, they send scout ships to map the system. Then they bring in their main fleet and attack the biggest population centers. Finally, they send mining ships to harvest what they want. Thompson studied the tactical display. That's useful, but it doesn't tell us how to beat them. There's more, Monica continued. The Colorians have been watching the Vex for months. They know where the Vex fleet is based, a massive construction facility in the Omega Nebula. That's where they build new ships and coordinate their attacks. Thompson felt her pulse quicken. A central command center? Yes, ma'am. The Colorians think that if we could damage it, the entire Vex network might be disrupted. General Kate Foster had been listening quietly from the back of the room. Now she stepped forward with a grim smile on her face. Admiral, I think we have our strategy, Foster said. Thompson looked at her. What are you thinking, Kate? Everyone expects us to defend Colorian space, Foster said. Set up defensive positions and wait for the Vex to attack. That's what any logical military would do. But we're not going to do that? No, Foster said firmly. We're going to attack them first. While they're preparing to assault the Calorian homeworld, we're going to hit their base in the Omega Nebula. Thompson stared at her. Kate, that's insane. We'd be jumping our entire fleet into the middle of Vex territory. Exactly, Foster replied. It's so crazy that they'll never expect it. The Vex are machines. They calculate probabilities. The probability of humans attacking their main base is 0. Dr. Clark was already working on his tablet, running calculations. It could work, he said slowly. If we hit their command center hard enough, it might disrupt their communications across the entire fleet. Captain Lewis nodded. The Calorian. Survivors said the Vex ships sometimes stop moving when they lose contact with the central command, like they're waiting for new orders. Thompson walked to the main display and studied the star charts. The Omega Nebula was deep in unexplored space, far from any human colony. If they lost the battle there, no one would even know what happened to them. How would we get there without being detected? Thompson asked. The nebula itself, Monica said. It's full of gas and radiation. Perfect cover for an approaching fleet. We could get within weapons range before they knew we were there, Foster added. We use the converted cargo ships as the main attack force. They look like civilian vessels on sensors. By the time the Vex realize they're armed, it'll be too late. Thompson considered the plan. It was bold, risky, and completely insane. It was also exactly the kind of thing humans were good at. What about the Calorian homeworld? She asked. If we take our entire fleet to attack the Vex base, who protects their people? We leave behind just enough ships to make it look like we're setting up defenses, Foster said. Meanwhile, the real attack happens at the Omega Nebula. Major Alex Ryan, head of Special Operations, had been quiet during the discussion. Now he spoke up. General, what if we could do more than just attack their base? What if we could get people inside their command center? Foster looked interested. What do you have in mind, Alex? A small team, maybe 20 soldiers hidden aboard one of the converted cargo ships. When the shooting starts, we board their command station and plant some surprises. Dr. Clark's eyes lit up. I've been working on quantum viruses that could disrupt their computer networks. If someone could plant them directly into their main system, the entire Vex fleet could be paralyzed, Thompson finished. The plan was taking shape. A massive fleet attack to draw attention, while a small team infiltrated the Vex command center to plant computer viruses that would cripple their entire network. Thompson looked around the room at her officers. They were planning the most dangerous military operation in human history. If it failed, humanity might face retaliation that could destroy Earth itself. But if it succeeded, they would save the Calorians and prove that humans were not to be underestimated. How long until we're ready? Thompson asked. 1 more week to finish the ship conversions, Dr. Clark said. 2 more days to complete the special operations training, Major Ryan added. The Calorian survivors are ready to guide us to the Omega Nebula whenever we give the word, Captain Lewis reported. Thompson made her decision. We launch in 10 days. I want every ship ready, every weapon tested, and every soldier trained. This is our one chance to save the Calorians and show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. As her officers hurried away to complete their preparations, Thompson remained in the command center, staring at the star charts. In 10 days, humanity would either win its greatest victory or face its greatest defeat. But that was the human way. When something needed to be done, they did it, regardless of the odds. The human fleet floated silently in the dark space at the edge of the Omega Nebula. 600 ships, most of them converted cargo haulers and mining vessels, waited for the signal to attack. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiance, watching the swirling clouds of gas and radiation ahead of them. All ships report ready, Captain, his communications officer said quietly. Jake nodded. Behind him, Admiral Thompson monitored the entire operation from her command ship. Around them, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled prepared for the most dangerous mission in their history. The plan was simple in theory. Use the nebula's radiation to hide their approach. Strike fast and hard at the Vex Command Center. Hold long enough for Major Ryan's Special Forces team to plant Dr. Clark's computer viruses. Then get out before the entire Vex Armada could respond. In practice, Jake knew they were probably all going to die. "Captain, we're getting signals from inside the nebula," the sensor operator reported. "Lots of metal, big ships." Jake felt his heart race. The Calorian survivors were right. The Vex had built their main base deep inside the nebula, thinking no one would ever find them there. "Admiral Thompson to all ships," came the voice over the communications system. "Operation Longshot is now active. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to save innocent people. Make every shot count." The human fleet moved forward into the nebula. The radiation played havoc with their sensors, but it also meant the Vex couldn't see them coming. Jake watched his tactical display as hundreds of human ships crept through the swirling gases like hunters stalking their prey. Commander Steve Parker's voice crackled over the radio from his lead fighter. "Black Star Squadron in position, Captain. We can see the Vex base on visual." Jake looked at his main screen as the images appeared. The Vex construction facility was massive. Hundreds of machine ships floated around it like insects around a hive. Dark metal structures stretched for kilometers in every direction, and at the center a huge command station that pulsed with electronic signals. "That's our target," Jake said to his crew. "Major Ryan, are your people ready?" "Ready as we'll ever be, Captain," came Ryan's voice from the converted cargo ship that carried his Special Forces team. "Just get us close to that command station." Jake took a deep breath. "All ships, this is Captain Sullivan. In 30 seconds, we show the Vex what happens when you threaten innocent people. Attack!" The human fleet burst out of the nebula like an angry swarm. Mining lasers that had once cut through asteroids now sliced into Vex ships. Converted cargo haulers launched missiles that had been built in factory ships during the journey. The Vex base lit up with explosions as the surprise attack hit home. For the first few minutes, everything went perfectly. The Vex ships were caught, completely off guard. They had never imagined that anyone would be crazy enough to attack their main base. Human ships rammed into Vex vessels, using their thick cargo hulls as weapons. Converted mining ships used their heavy equipment to tear enemy ships apart, but the Vex adapted quickly. They were machines, after all. Within 10 minutes, they had organized a defense. Massive Vex battleships moved to intercept the human attack. Energy weapons began cutting through human ships like paper. "We're losing ships fast," Jake's tactical officer reported. 40% casualties in the first wave. Jake gritted his teeth. They had expected heavy losses, but seeing good people die was never easy. "Keep pushing forward. We have to get Major Ryan's team to that command station." Commander Parker's fighters were doing incredible work, darting between the huge Vex ships and taking out their weapon systems. But there were so many enemies. For every Vex ship they destroyed, 2 more appeared. "Captain, this is Parker. I'm seeing movement from deeper in the nebula. Looks like the main Vex fleet is coming home." Jake felt ice in his stomach. If the full Vex Armada arrived before they completed their mission, the human fleet would be completely destroyed. "Major Ryan, how much more time do you need?" Jake called. "We're almost at the command station," Ryan replied. The sound of weapons, fire came through his radio. "Heavy resistance, but we're pushing through." On Jake's screen, he could see Ryan's cargo ship fighting its way toward the central Vex station. Human soldiers were using mining equipment and industrial tools to battle Vex defense systems. It looked like chaos, but somehow they were winning. "Captain, we've got a problem," his sensor operator said. "The main Vex fleet just jumped in. 3,000 ships heading our way." Jake looked at his tactical display. The human fleet was down to maybe 300 ships now. They were outnumbered, 10 to 1, and the odds were getting worse every second. "All ships, this is Admiral Thompson," came the voice over the radio. "We knew this was a one-way mission, but we're going to make it count. Cover Major Ryan's team. No matter what happens. To us, they have to complete their mission." Jake felt proud of his fellow humans. Even facing certain death, they were still focused on saving the Calorian people. That was what made humanity special. They didn't fight for glory or conquest. They fought because it was the right thing to do. Captain Sullivan to Major Ryan. Jake called. "The whole Vex fleet is coming. How much more time?" "2 more minutes," Ryan replied. "Dr. Clark's viruses are almost in place, but I need you to keep those big ships away from us." Jake looked at the approaching Vex battleships. They were massive, each one bigger than 10 human ships. But human ships were faster and more maneuverable. "All ships, ramming speed," Jake ordered. "We're going to buy Major Ryan those 2 minutes." What happened next would be remembered in human history forever. Hundreds of converted cargo ships and mining vessels charged directly at the massive Vex battleships. They used their heavy industrial hulls as weapons, crashing into enemy ships in explosions that lit up the nebula. Captain Sullivan's own ship, the UES Defiance, led the charge. He aimed directly at the largest Vex battleship, the one that was heading for Ryan's position. "This is for the Calorians," Jake said quietly, then louder. "All hands brace for impact." The UES Defiance struck the Vex battleship at full speed. The explosion was visible throughout the nebula. But it worked. The enemy ship was destroyed, and the path to the command station remained open. "Major Ryan to all ships," came the call everyone was waiting for. "Viruses are in place. I repeat, the package is delivered. Get ready for fireworks." At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Vex ships continued their attack, cutting down more human vessels, but then slowly some of the enemy ships began to stop moving. Their lights flickered. Their weapons went silent. "It's working," Lieutenant Sarah Kim called from her fighter. "Some of the Vex ships are just floating there." More and more Vex vessels began to malfunction as Dr. Clark's computer viruses spread through their network. The viruses were designed to attack the central command system that controlled all Vex operations. Without clear orders, many of the machine ships simply stopped fighting, but not all of them. Hundreds of Vex ships were still operational, and they were very angry. The remaining human fleet found themselves in a running battle as they tried to escape the nebula. "All surviving ships, retreat to Rally Point Alpha," Admiral Thompson ordered. "Mission accomplished. Now let's get home." Of the 600 ships that entered the Omega Nebula, only 150 made it out. The cost had been terrible. But as they jumped to safety, they could see the Vex base behind them in chaos. Ships drifted helplessly. The command station was dark. The entire Vex network was falling apart. Major Ryan's voice came over the radio one last time. "This is Ryan. Package delivered successfully. The Vex collective is fragmenting. Repeat, the collective is breaking down." Admiral Thompson looked at her surviving fleet and felt both pride and sadness. They had done the impossible. They had struck at the heart of the Vex Armada and won, but the cost had been enormous. As news of the victory spread, humanity would discover that their sacrifice had achieved something amazing. Across the galaxy, Vex ships were stopping their attacks. Without central coordination, the machine collective was collapsing. The Calorians were safe, and the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. 3 months after the Battle of Omega Nebula, Ambassador Lisa Carter walked through the halls of Nexus Prime Station. But everything was different now. Alien diplomats who had once ignored her now stopped to bow respectfully when she passed. Guards from mighty civilizations saluted her as if she were their own leader. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever. Lisa entered the main council chamber where Elder Zethron was waiting for her. The Calorian leader looked healthier than she had seen him in years. His blue-gray skin had regained its natural color, and his silver eyes sparkled with joy. "Ambassador Carter," Zethron said, rising from his seat. "I have wonderful news to share." Lisa smiled. "I'm listening, Elder." "The last Vex ship in Calorian space has been destroyed," Zethron announced. "Our homeworld is completely free. Our people are returning to the liberated colonies. The nightmare is over." Lisa felt a warm feeling in her chest. It had all been worth it. The sacrifice, the losses, the impossible odds. They had saved an entire civilization. "There's more," Zethron continued. "Our doctors have been working with your Dr. Rodriguez on combining Calorian healing knowledge with human medical technology. The results are amazing. We've created treatments, that can cure diseases that have plagued the galaxy for thousands of years. Lisa knew about the medical breakthrough. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had spent the last 3 months working closely with Calorian healers. Together, they had developed medicines that worked like miracles. Diseases that killed millions were now easily curable. The partnership between humans and Calorians was saving lives across the galaxy. "The Galactic Council is ready for you," Zethran said. Lisa took a deep breath. Today was special. President Hayes was coming to Nexus Prime to address the Galactic Council for the first time. It would be humanity's moment to speak as an equal among the great powers of the galaxy. They walked together into the main assembly hall. Lisa had been in this room hundreds of times before, usually sitting in the back where nobody paid attention to her. Today she was escorted to the front row where the major powers sat. The hall was packed. Representatives from every civilization in the galaxy had come to hear what the human president would say. The Altarian Empire, who had refused to help the Calorians, now looked nervous. The Zenthari Confederacy, who had calculated that fighting the Vex was impossible, watched carefully. Even the ancient ethereal collective, who spoke of cosmic balance and did nothing, seemed interested in humanity's words. Admiral Grace Thompson entered the hall, wearing her full dress uniform. She had become a hero across the galaxy. Stories of her leadership during the impossible battle had spread to every world. Children of a dozen species played games pretending to be Admiral Thompson, leading the charge against the evil machines. Behind her walked President Daniel Hayes. He looked tired but determined. The last 3 months had been hard for him. He had to write letters to thousands of families, telling them their loved ones had died saving strangers in a distant part of the galaxy. But he had also received reports that made him proud. Humanity was now respected throughout the galaxy. Representatives of the Galactic Council, President Hayes began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. 3 months ago, my people faced an impossible choice. We could stay safe while innocent people died, or we could risk everything to do what was right. The hall was completely silent. Everyone was listening. We chose to fight, Hayes continued. Not because we were strong, not because we thought we could win. We fought because someone had to. Because the Calorian people deserve to live. Because standing by while evil triumphs is not the human way. Lisa looked around the hall. The alien diplomats were hanging on every word. This was completely different from the usual boring speeches about trade agreements and border disputes. We lost almost 30,000 brave souls in that battle, Hayes said, his voice growing sad. Mothers and fathers who will never come home. Young people who gave their lives for strangers they had never met. But their sacrifice was not in vain. The Calorian people live. The Vex threat is ended and the galaxy is a safer place. The Altarian ambassador shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Lisa knew what he was thinking. His empire had 10,000 ships but had been too afraid to use them. A species with only 200 ships had done what they could not. But this is not about human glory, Hayes continued. This is about what we can accomplish when we work together. Human courage combined with Calorian wisdom. Human determination combined with Calorian healing knowledge. Together, we are stronger than we ever were apart. Elder Zethran stood up and began to applaud. Soon, the entire hall was on their feet, clapping for the human president who had saved an entire civilization. Hayes raised his hand for quiet. The galaxy has learned something important. Size doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. What matters is the courage to do what's right when others won't. And I promise you this. As long as humanity exists, we will stand against those who threaten the innocent. The applause was deafening. But Hayes wasn't finished. To those who think they can prey on the weak, who believe that might makes right, who think the galaxy will always look the other way, I have a simple message. Hayes paused, looking directly at each delegation in the hall. When good people are threatened, when justice calls for action, when the innocent cry out for help, humanity will answer. And when humanity mobilizes, the galaxy itself trembles. The hall erupted in cheers. But Lisa noticed something interesting. While most species were celebrating, The representatives of the more aggressive civilizations looked worried. They were thinking about Hayes's words. They were realizing that there was a new power in the galaxy, one that couldn't be intimidated or bought. After the speech, Lisa found herself surrounded by diplomats wanting to talk. The Zenthari offered new trade agreements. The Altarians proposed military alliances. Even species she had never spoken to before wanted to establish relations with humanity. But the most important conversation came from Elder Zethron. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "my people have made a decision. We want to offer humanity a formal alliance, not just military but complete partnership. We will share all of our medical knowledge. We will work together to help other species who face threats they cannot handle alone." Lisa felt tears in her eyes. The Calorian-Human Alliance? "Partners in peace," Zethron said. "Guardians of the innocent. Together we can make the galaxy a better place." 6 months later, Lisa stood in the same office where Elder Zethron had first made his desperate plea. But now, dozens of requests for help covered her desk. Species facing pirates asked for human protection. Worlds threatened by aggressive neighbors requested human mediation. Systems dealing with natural disasters wanted human emergency aid. Humanity had become what they never expected to be, the galaxy's protectors, not through conquest or intimidation, but through their willingness to help others when no one else would. Admiral Thompson knocked on Lisa's door. "Ambassador, we have another situation. A peaceful mining colony is being attacked by raiders. They're asking for help." Lisa smiled. "How many ships do we have available?" 50, including some new Calorian medical vessels." "Send them," Lisa said without hesitation. "And make sure they know, humanity doesn't abandon people who need help." As Admiral Thompson left to organize the rescue mission, Lisa looked out at the stars. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of predators and bullies who thought they could do whatever they wanted. They were about to learn they were wrong. When humanity made a promise, they kept it. When innocent people called for help, humans answered. And when humanity mobilized, even the most powerful forces in the galaxy learned to tremble. The age of human protection had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.